Good evening, everybody. Thank you all for coming. I've just waited a few minutes to give people a chance to arrive if they're caught in the snow. I appreciate you all coming in this weather. First of all, I'll just go through housekeeping really. So the toilets are through to my left, to your right there. The fire exits, we've got a fire exit on my right here, we've got another one through by the toilet, the main entrance, and there's also one through the bar. There is some recording going on. We had thought about doing some video recording, but we've left that off for tonight. So that you don't need to worry if you don't like being filmed. That won't be happening, but it will be recorded. And that's just so that we can use that afterwards. So we've had apologies for the meeting from Councillor Bobby Baines and also John Murphy, who's from the local resident group. I'd like to welcome to the meeting Wendy Morton MP, and I think Liam from her office is over there as well, so welcome Liam. Councillor Timothy Wilson, Councillor John Murray, Gerald Kells from the CPRE. We were hoping to have Rob Mayer from the BBC here, but I think he's probably got stuck on the way out of Birmingham. And I'm not sure then whether this was Adrian Walters from the Stonewall campaign about roads was going to try to come. I'm not sure whether he's made it as yet. I can't quite see with this light. And then Jenny Hume, the Vice Chair of the Beacon Action Group. So welcome everybody anyway. So as I say, thank you for coming, and also thank you to the Aldridge Social Club for the use of their venue. Thank you Russell Smith for helping set up the meeting and for recording the meeting as well. I'd also like to thank the members of the action group that I'm part of, who set up the meeting in the north side of Aldridge back in November, and also have put this meeting together tonight. And also thank all those who have been circulating leaflets for us. In terms of the rest of the agenda, just to outline that for you, what I'll do next is ask Wendy Morton if she'd like to come forward and make a statement. And then we'll talk about planning applications and the other local sites affected, as well as Bosty Lane. We'll then talk about assistance to people who aren't actually online, because we're finding that is a problem for one or two people with planning application objections. I'm going to look at taking a 10-minute break after about an hour. One is to have a look at the weather in case it got really bad and any of you want to go then. And the other is in case you want to go and get drinks or anything from the bar. And then we'll move on to the audience concerns and questions, and we've got a roving microphone, so if you want to put your hand up, we'll bring that round to you so that you can ask a question, raise a concern, and if there's anybody who is in the bar, probably not tonight, then we can actually ask them to come through to the door there, and we can take questions from them at the door. Okay, so without any more to do, I'll ask Wendy Morton if she'd like to make a statement. Thank you, Wendy. From that microphone, please.
Okay, well, first of all, I want to say a huge thank you to you for organising this evening, but most importantly for everybody who has braved the weather. I know that if the weather hadn't been quite so inclement, this room would have been full because of the interest and the concern that there is across Aldridge about what is going on to our green open spaces and greenbelt. But I want to be absolutely clear that I am extremely concerned about the scale of the housing development that has been proposed across Aldridge so far, with more than 2,000 new homes identified. And in particular, this proposal for up to 500 new homes at Lodge Farm on Bosty Lane, which is one of the key things that people have come along this evening to discuss. Because I do believe that these proposals represent a serious and an inappropriate incursion into our greenbelt land, which is close to existing homes. And I'm clear this application raises fundamental concerns that should not be ignored. Now, we know the Planning Committee has not yet considered this application, so that does mean that there is still time for everybody to make sure that their voices are heard. And I do believe that we can continue to make our voices heard, and I'm sure one of the councillors will confirm this or tell me off if I've got it wrong, but we can continue to make sure our voices are heard and our views are fed in until this decision is made, and that is really important. Don't leave it to others. Remind your neighbours, get those views all fed in. Because these so-called hybrid proposals would fundamentally, we know this, but we need to make sure others know this, alter the character of this, our local area, resulting in the permanent loss of greenbelt land and agricultural land, which plays an important role in protecting our local environment and, of course, our food security. I also want to be clear that greenbelt is not spare land that is just waiting to be built upon. It has a purpose. And that purpose is to prevent urban sprawl, to protect the identity of our communities, and to safeguard open countryside for future generations. This site, the Bosty Lane one, in my view, fails that test. Another of my main concerns is the strain that a development of this scale would place on already overstretched local services. GP surgeries, dentists, schools, right across Aldridge, we know they're under significant pressure already. There's little evidence that the infrastructure needed to support an additional 500 homes is either secured or is in fact deliverable. Traffic, roads, highways, those impacts are another major issue. Bosty Lane, as we know, is surrounded, there are surrounding residential roads. The main routes through Aldridge already experience near gridlock at peak times. And I often joke that the way, when you look at all of these planning proposals and outlines that are coming forward, we won't need traffic calming in Aldridge, people, because we'll be gridlocked. So I will keep pushing that one, don't worry. But adding hundreds of additional vehicles risks worsening congestion, increasing road safety concerns, and undermining the quality of life for local residents. And of course, there are also environmental impacts that must be taken seriously too. The loss of open land will inevitably affect local air quality and our biodiversity. And I'm really concerned by the potential loss of important wildlife habitat as well, including risks to protected species, with reports that up to 9 species of bats may be affected by development on this site. In addition, the risk of land instability cannot simply be brushed aside. Records of past mineral extraction in this area are incomplete, and without comprehensive surveys, there is a genuine danger of land subsidence if development proceeds prematurely. So this raises serious questions about the long-term safety of any homes built on this land, as well as the impact on neighbouring properties too. So, as your Member of Parliament, I want you to know that I will continue to oppose inappropriate greenbelt development, and I'll continue to press for planning decisions that are rooted in local need as well, that are also make sure we have proper infrastructure provision, and they consider environmental responsibility as well. If anybody did tune into Prime Minister's questions yesterday, it was quite a lively one, but I did take the opportunity of having a question to press the Prime Minister on this very issue, asking him why he's allowing our countryside to be bulldozed while thousands of existing homes sit empty across the West Midlands. So rest assured, I'm going to continue to do everything I can in Parliament to raise these issues and to campaign to protect our green belt. But it is vital that all you as local residents also submit your formal objections to the Planning Authority, as these really do carry real weight when the application is considered. So ladies and gentlemen, we really need to continue to work together on this. We need to stand shoulder to shoulder against the development and make sure as many neighbours, friends, family who live locally as possible put in their objections too. And if you feel it's not worth it, it is worth it. Just keep doing it, please. And so this meeting tonight is an opportunity to raise concerns, but also to share information and ensure that the issues affecting our community are clearly understood, because there'll be people in this room who have information that some of us maybe don't know. So let's share that information. And so I do really strongly encourage everyone here to engage fully in the planning process and to make your views known, so that together we can make the strongest possible case to protect our greenbelt and to ensure that development in Aldridge is properly planned, it's sustainable, and importantly, it's in the interests of our local residents and our local community. So thank you all for taking your time to be here this evening. I actually look forward to hearing some of the comments. But just to conclude, on the point about Rob Mayer and the BBC, he has been in touch with me. So I have said we will try and feed some pictures through as well, because I'm really keen that he gets information and we use that as another opportunity to highlight the campaign that we are fighting here in Aldridge to protect our precious greenbelt. So thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Right, what I'd like to do now is talk about planning applications and talk about the local sites that are affected. Partly this is because I think people may not have picked up from the draft local plan just how many sites are affected around Aldridge. First of all, we started off in November talking about Birch Hill, which is on Stonnell Road, Aldridge. People may not realise there are actually two other sites around by Richmond Hall there on Stonnell Road that are also in the draft local plan. Then we've got Bosty Lane itself and the site that we're talking about tonight. There's a site at Gorse Farm which has been resubmitted as a planning application, which is down Lazy Hill Road. There are two sites that have come up on Little Aston Road, one on the south side, which is in the draft local plan, but then developers opened up consultation on the fields on the north side of Little Aston Road as well. Then there's a site in the draft local plan at the corner of Middlemore Lane West and Bosty Lane. There's a large site up at Shar Oak on Lichfield Road as you go down towards Muckley Corner. There's the site on Longwood Lane, which had been to the planning inspectorate. On Aldridge Road around Calderfields Golf Club, there are two sites either side of the road there, which are included in the draft local plan. The Chester Road by Planters Nursery, Streetley, there's been an outline planning application there. Aldridge Road, Questlett Road, Streetley, there's another large site down there. And then Chester Road, Little Hardwick Road, there's another site in the draft local plan. On top of that, there were two small sites in the draft local plan that included garages at the rear of shops on Walsallwood Road and the police station itself, the police station building on Anchor Road. On top of that, you may have seen around in reports in the last week or two that people in Hammerwick and Burntwood and also on the other side of Aldridge towards the A5 are concerned about sites around them. So there's a lot of sites around this area at the moment. So to talk about Bosty Lane itself really, the action group, which I said I'm part of, prepared some resource documents and if you haven't responded to the planning application, would like to do so, there is a draft objection letter to the Bosty Lane planning application and a guide to using that. And we can make copies of that available after the meeting if you would like to leave an address or an email address. I've got a sheet here for you to do that. In terms of the deadlines for objections, as Wendy said, the planning officers have actually confirmed to me can be put in any time before the decision, and I've actually been told at the moment that's likely to be the 12th of February. So if you haven't put in an objection, would still like to do so, please do that. And as I say, there is a draft letter that we have, if you wanted to use that, that we're able to do so. One thing I need to emphasise is that there may be several planning applications for each site, and if there are, you do need to actually reply to each one, or respond to each one. And on that point, I'll ask Gerald Kells if you'd like to come forward and just say a few words about the planning application stages. Thank you, Gerald.
Thank you. I'm going to say a couple of things about what will happen and the way it will go, so that you know, in a sense, what the roadmap is. I'm not actually representing CPRE. I work for them as a consultant, so I just wanted to clarify that. And I work for them and for Friends of the Earth, providing information for the local plan. I work as a consultant for a number of people. I worked for CPRE over many years. So the first thing is the decision on the 12th. And you can make comments until the 12th, until the very day, on that, and think of the key issues that the councillors will have to decide on. I've noted 3 reasons that it might be turned down. I'm sure some more will come out, but these are 3 that I think are quite important. First of all, it's slapped next to a site of special scientific interest. That is the very highest level of nature protection. You know Dingle and Cuckoo's Nook, lovely place, and it comes right up to that. So that's the first very important reason for refusal. Secondly, there's the transport issues, and you know them better than me. Walsall turned down the Longwood Lane, which is now at appeal, on transport grounds. And thirdly, there's this question of grey belt. They claim in their documentation that it is grey belt, and they also have this rather clever statement, which is that Walsall themselves admit part of it is grey belt. That is not the point. A little bit of it is grey belt. The way grey belt is defined in planning policy, it's a stupid way to define it, never mind, but it is. But the way it is defined is the effect it will have on one of the reasons is 2 areas joining up. And we know the effect of building this will have a huge impact on the gap between Walsall and Aldridge. So the fact that a little bit might not have that effect, the whole lot does. So that is, I won't borrow the word of the guy in Minnesota, but there is a word for that. And it is certainly not, in my view, grey belt. The last point is it's linked to other... The last point, and this is an important one, is it is not in the local plan. This site is different to the other ones you're concerned about in Aldridge. It's also different to the sites at the Mellish Road and next to the Arboretum, which are in the local plan. It is not in the local plan. It's not part of that Regulation 18 local plan. And I suspect that's precisely because the planners knew that it was slapped next to an SSSI. So there is a good reason for, all those are good reasons for turning it down. Also in terms of grey belt, now this is where those 2 sites, they're not Aldridge sites exactly, the 2 sites, Calderfields and Mellish Road, are very important, because if you look at those and you look at that belt of land between Aldridge and Walsall, you're filling that land in. apart from the lime pits and bits you can't fill in Aldridge Airport, you're taking away that gap. That's a very important greenbelt. So it's not in the greenbelt. So up until that point, you have the opportunity to make your comments. And the more you do, the better, frankly. You can also speak to your councillors, ask your councillors to support you. But just be aware of one thing, it's always a piece of advice. If a councillor is on the planning committee, they cannot comment on the planning application until it goes to committee. It's the law. So don't say, oh, so-and-so isn't supporting us, they won't answer us. They can't, and you don't want them to, because if they did, they couldn't vote, and they'll vote the way you want, you hope. So you can send them letters, you can lobby them, but don't expect a reply from people who are on the planning committee. Councillors who aren't on the planning committee are in a different position. So there are two things that can happen. It may be that they give permission. You will know before the planning committee whether the officers are recommending that it will be given permission. Given that it's not in the local plan, it's far more likely that the officers will not. I don't know what they're thinking, but if it was in the local plan, it would be more likely that they would advise for it to be accepted, because by putting it in the local plan, they've said, in principle, we at Walsall Council think this is a good thing. So the fact that it's not in the local plan is very important on this site. So that's an important thing. So it goes to the planning committee, it is then up to the councillors to decide. And if it goes ahead, it goes ahead. I mean, there is judicial review, that's the very limited power that you have. But there isn't a third-party right of appeal. You don't have the developer has a right of appeal, you don't. For years, people like me have argued against that situation, but it's the case. So, if it's turned down, there are two things that the developer can do. They can withdraw the application. They could reapply. They could reapply for smaller bits. And my guess would be that would be something they might do if they felt the reasons for refusal were very strong. If they think they've got a very good case, they will go to appeal. And that will go, it might be by letter, it will probably be a hearing. There will be a hearing, that will be announced. If you're an objector, you will have the opportunity to go to that and to present your case to that hearing. That will be in front of an inspector. Now, unlike talking to your councillors, where you're putting your general arguments, you will want to look at more detailed and, if necessary, technical arguments about the transport to support your case. But assuming it's been turned down, the officers from Walsall Council will also be putting a case. That doesn't mean that you can just leave it to them. You will be very unwise to leave it to them, because quite often an inspector will listen very carefully to objections put by local people, especially if they're supported by good evidence. So you should not, don't just say, I'll leave it to the officers, good as they will be, but you need to do that. So that's what will happen. So you need to think about and prepare for that. And maybe you need to get, in terms of your group and getting together, of how you're going to make sure you can put any evidence you need to put. And if you need specialist help, and it might be technical help or it might be just planning help, how you're going to organise that. So that's what happens with that. And after that appeal, the inspector will decide whether it should go ahead. So the other thing I just want to mention, sorry, I hope it's not kind of like a bit of a journey, is the local plan itself. So let's assume, you have to assume two things now. You have to assume, first of all, that the plan has turned it down, and secondly, that it isn't won at the appeal. So it's rejected at the appeal. what happens to this now in the local plan? What do you have to do at the next stage of the local plan? So the next thing that will happen with the local plan, it's been through Regulation 18 stage, and some of you made general comments. The council will bring forward its Regulation 19. They're called that because it's the numbers in the planning thing. It doesn't matter. But the Regulation 19, and at that point it will be you will have to make formal comments. I always remind people, if you've commented on the Regulation 18 plan, don't say I won't comment on the Regulation 19 plan, because you cannot appear at the public examination unless you have objected at the Regulation 19. That's the way it works. So even if you've said things about the local plan last time, you have to say them again. So the likelihood is that Walsall Council will not introduce this site into the Regulation 19 plan. It's possible they would do. So there's a possibility that they might say, oh, well, we'll now add this to the Regulation 19 plan. I think it's unlikely, but they might. So let's say that they don't, which is what is the most likely scenario then. In that case, you can make objections to the small site. I think you all know that the small site of 72 houses, just at the top bit of the site, the bit on that side. You can, if that is in the plan, you can object to that. You can tell them that you don't want it expanded, but when it comes to the examination, neither you nor the developer can talk about a site that isn't in the plan. So when it comes to the examination, you can only talk about that small site. The developer will be arguing. That doesn't mean you shouldn't put arguments, but arguments need to be about whether Walsall is providing enough housing and things like that. Because that site will not be discussed at the local plan examination, because they will discuss the sites that are in the plan, not any sites that are not in the plan. Should Walsall Council, and I don't think this is likely, but should they put it into the plan, then you would have to object at the Regulation 19 stage, and you would have to go and present evidence. So it's slightly complicated, but that's the process. So, just very quickly go through it. Get your comments in until the planning application. If Walsall Council, you will know about a week before whether Walsall Council are minded, whether the officers are revising giving permission. It will be up to the councillors to decide. Assuming that they refuse it, then you need to think about how you're going to go to an appeal, which is the most likely thing. If they reapply, deal with that. That's a possibility, but think how you're going to deal with appeal. Assuming that appeal is successful, you will then have to think about how you deal with the Regulation 19 plan. And just because your site isn't in it, don't take your feet off the gas, because you need to comment anyway. So that's the process that it will go through. Now I'm hoping I'll be able to answer questions. I come from Walsall, so come the gap, if the snow is coming down like anything, I may have to disappear, but I hope I'll be able to answer questions. So I hope that's been helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Gerald. Thank you, Gerald. I'll just add to that now that, as Gerald mentioned, it's important to lobby the members of the planning committee and also our local councillors, either emailing them with brief messages of concern or attending their surgeries to lobby them in person. We are looking at doing a number of things going forward, and if anyone is able to help in any way with those, it may be handing out leaflets, it may be going and protesting down by the council house, whatever. If you would like to leave your name and address at the front here, then we'd very much welcome that. Thank you. Okay, so the next item, I mentioned about assistance to people who are not online. So we've been looking at trying to provide help to people with submitting objections through Aldridge Library. And what we're looking for really is whether there are any people who would be willing to volunteer to go down to the library and meet people down there and help with that. If you would be willing to do that, again, could you leave your email address here at the end of the meeting, and then we'll explain what we're looking at doing. It just really be taking people through on the computer and showing them how to actually submit an objection on there. Okay, thank you. Right, just to keep an eye on the time. It's just gone 8 o'clock. So that takes us over to audience concerns and question. So we'll give about 25 minutes to that, and I think we'll take a break then to check on the weather and give people a chance to go and get a drink if they want to. On that item, would anybody like to raise an issue of concern or a question?
The question is, how often is the local plan revised? On a 12-monthly basis?
When local plans get revised depends on a lot of things. It is a plan for 20 years hence. So the idea is that the number of houses that are being provided, the local authority is given a number of houses that it has to provide over 20 years based on a government formula, which is crazy, but that's another story. And they have to provide that number of houses. So the idea is that they allocate sites, enough sites, to provide that number of houses and to add up to that number, along with some sites which are called windfalls, i.e. sites which will come forward that we don't know about at the moment. It's a quite complicated process. One thing I didn't mention actually, which is important to say, Walsall had a shortfall of housing by these numbers, not by reality, but by these numbers. But because of the way the numbers have changed, Birmingham has a huge excess. It admits to having an excess of 13,000 houses in its plan. We've argued that it's somewhere nearer 30,000. So Birmingham is able to offer housing to other people. Those debates are going on at the moment, and Birmingham are actually quite positive about that. There are other local authorities like Telford who are building more houses than they need, who could offer some houses to meet the numbers. You would say, why should Telford meet? Well, the thing is quite crazy, but that is also the case. So when it comes to local plan, there will be a question about why are they building on your green belt when Birmingham has land to build on in the middle of Birmingham, which will be a far more sustainable place. And that is a good point to put to that, and to lobby your councillors to keep pressing that point with Birmingham councillors. But to answer your question, it's a 20-year period, and it gets reviewed probably every 10 years or so. It depends on each one, and it goes through this rather laborious process. You want a local plan, because if you don't have a local plan, for various reasons, developers have a good way of getting if it's not up to date, they can use other methods, which I won't go into now because they're quite complicated, to get planning through.
Going through some of obviously the things that you've been talking about, and reasons for objections, and they are an opinion on of objections. We are of the opinion that the road infrastructure isn't there, that the schools can't deal with the additional bodies, GP surgeries, etc. So, as a stronger case, is there not an opportunity to gain some actual solid data? So, from the medical centre, what their sort of what additional people they could take or where they are. The schools, are they fully full? Do we know? Have we got numbers that can back up that argument? We see odd, on the roads, we see these odd counters, don't they, that record traffic volumes. Is the data gone? Rest of the batteries. Is there any data that can back that up? Because we're told in this world, data is everything.
Thank you for that. I've been working with John and also shared some information with David about school place planning. My own role is that I've been involved in schools, running schools and also opening schools for new housing estates over the last 10 years or so. So I'm very much aware of local plans, local area plans, local housing, travel plans for children, appeals, admissions, place planning, etc. I agree that opinion is not helpful, and so data is important. The data is compelling for the Bosty Lane development when it comes to school place planning. There are no available places in Aldridge School, in Barbican School, in Shellfield School, in St Francis of Assisi, in any of those local schools that are easily commutable for children on that Bosty Lane site. In the primary area, the situation is not really any better. Whetstone has 4 or 5 places across the whole school. St Mary's of the Angels has no places. So the arguments for school place planning are very, very difficult. 500 houses on Bosty Lane is not sufficient to generate enough for a school in its own right. So those places would have to be absorbed by those schools, creating a wash of places where other children will become displaced. It would be quite a mess when it comes to school places. So with 500 houses, the calculation typically is that 1,000 houses generates 1 form of entry per year group. So that's 30 children. So 500 houses would be about 15 children per year group. Now that's very difficult for 1 form entry schools like Whetstone to absorb. And so there is that data. I have shared that with John and with David for the Bosty Lane development in particular. And that's why it's not on the local area plan, because some of the other areas that are in the local plan, in that very complex ecosystem of transport, environmental concerns, employment, health, education, some of those other areas that David's listed here, there are some school places, certainly up towards the Shire Oak end. There are places in Stonell, places in the Shire Oak end, but not round here. There aren't school places for the children to go to. If they do get to go to those local schools, that will just lead to an offset of those children who would currently expect to go there, having to go somewhere else. So hopefully that's helpful, but John has got all of that data and has included that into his objection submission.
Thank you, Mike. In terms of the question of health, my understanding on that is it would be down to the Walsall Health Authority. Sorry, I can't remember the actual title of it at the moment. To look at the information and determine what would be needed. In terms of roads, we have looked at having surveys and reports done on those, and we did do some work, or did ask for some work on Stonnell Road, and we could do a similar thing with Bosty Lane, which would be a paid-for report. So we could certainly do that, but yes, I take your point about needing, data to back up what we're saying. Okay, next question. Okay, well, there's a hand behind you there, Diane.
Has anyone done any kind of ecological or geological survey on the site?
Okay, we have had two people doing a lot of research work, and there is a lot of data on both ecological and geological factors around the area. So there is historically quite a lot of information that we've managed to build together on that, and we tried to feed into the objection details.
Yeah, and knowing the site as I do, it'd be quite prohibitive to try and build anything on there, I would imagine, but there we are. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Did I see another hand at the back there? Yeah.
I hadn't realised that it was a triple SI, the woods and the nature reserve there, and that maybe as somebody that's walked there for 30 years and loves bird watching and loves nature and botany, that I didn't know that. Hardly anyone knows that, so maybe that's something we should start publicising so that people can put that in the objection, and so we can all encourage people to object to it, because it's just the worst possible site, because it's the most biodiverse site. For a bit of farmland around Aldridge is just off Bosty Lane. So thank you.
Yes, thank you for that comment.
Hiya. Mine's more an info share than a question. So I own one of the properties that was built on part of Aldridge School playing field, which is directly opposite the proposed entrance to the site. Now, we had the four houses collectively came together and had gates put onto the front of the properties, and the planning application for that was approved in 2023. As part of the condition of those gates, they had to be a minimum of 5 metres set back from the curbside. With the proposed extension of Bosty Lane creating that filter lane, that directly contradicts, I think it's planning conditions T7 and T13 of the UDP. So in approving, excuse me, absolutely shaking, I don't know why. In approving the proposal as it is, that the planning committee would be directly contravening their own recent planning conditions. So I've submitted that to John as part of the overall objection, but I think it's quite a strong piece of evidence.
Okay, thank you for that.
Okay. Hi.
I've already submitted my objection, but there's obviously other things now being mentioned and added. So can I go back and submit a further one? And does that count, just being curious, does that count as one, or is it one per person? But I can keep submitting extra information.
I'm just looking whether the councillors are able to answer that question. I know I've managed to add photographs and so on, but... I think
it's important. Thank you. I'm used to shouting in the council, so forgive me. I think it's important that you all do put another objection in, because I'm sure we've all picked something up, particularly from Joe, so thank you for that earlier, in terms of other reasons to object. I just want to make it clear, if I can, David, position. So fortunately, unlike John, I don't sit on the planning committee, John does. So I can be quite vocal, and I'm always quite vocal. I'm in your corner and I'm objecting to this planning application. I've already put my objections in, and I've also picked things up this evening that I'm going to add to that. So please do that. Wendy's touched upon all the points pretty much that we should object on. The only thing that I would say is that this is likely to be at planning committee in March. So forgive me for having my back to you, David. But this is likely to be at a March planning committee if the officers can get it there. Two people, which Joe didn't mention, can speak at that committee meeting. I've already put my name down to be one of them, and I'd love one of you to be one of the other ones to support me and to speak to the planning committee to hopefully make them make the right decision. And the other thing that Wendy touched upon is keep those objections coming in, because the consultation ends on the 28th of Jan, but the officers will take all of your comments and all of your views on board until that report has been written. I had a lengthy conversation with her today, made her aware of my position and made her aware that I'll be speaking against this at the planning committee. So I just want to say, keep up doing what you're doing. I think she said to me earlier there was hundreds of objections, which is amazing. And there's also some statutory consultees who's also put in objections, which is also supports us. So please keep doing what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson.
Can you duplicate your application, your protests? Yes, can you go in and do it again if you want to, or add other things to it?
So I'd just make another objection. I'd just put another objection in with any additional points that you want to make, and the officers will pick them up. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I ask about objections? When the plan was put out, or when the planning permission, they'd done a lot of their surveys in the driest summer that we've had in ages. We went there the other day, we went walking, and one of the things that they said is that, they commented about the fact that there wasn't water from the fields that go into Cuckoo's Nook. We've actually got video footage to show exactly how much water goes through. Do they take that video footage? And can we upload that to the council website?
These are probably more aimed at John than I, but because obviously John's a committee member. But yes, you can send pictures in, any evidence that you've got. Ecological reports, like somebody mentioned at the back, but pictures, videos, that sort of thing, they will all definitely take them on board. And every objection and every picture, photo, etc., goes into a report that's given to all the committee members. John, did you want to add anything? Or? Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
I'll just say on that as well, I have put photographs in. You might find that you need to contact the planning officer in terms of any videos, because I was unable to put videos onto the portal.
Can I add something, please, David? I'll point out, personally, feel very strongly in it, I haven't heard it mentioned, is that the 500 home site by Wayne, their proposals, cuts straight across two important public footpaths that lead from Aldridge into the site. Their proposal for dealing with that is eventually just to run them along the side of the roads, through a housing estate. There is no comparison between walking straight into open countryside, open greenbelt countryside and farmland, as to walking across the road, Bosty Lane, and going in through a housing estate. Totally is against the greenbelt. One of the purposes of greenbelt is to allow access to open countryside and green fields. So I'd be interested to know if the planners who are here tonight consider that to be a valid objection or not.
Joe, would you?
That's a really important point about pictures. If it goes to an examination, an inspector who's not from here, pictures will tell 100 stories. They do. And also, don't be afraid of challenging what a professional has said about the site. For example, if they've examined it in the summer, when you go to the inspector will be critical of it, and they will want to know that they've done their work. So the fact that it's not, even if just because it's a professional who's done the work, don't be afraid to bring up those things and to say that this is what we know. On transport, the person who's done that transport assessment won't have been down won't have looked at a lot of things that you know and understand and can tell an inspector. So don't be afraid to tell them. And also, mention about the SSSIs and things. If you look at the report they've done, you will find they will have identified all where the SSSIs and things are. So you don't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel and go back and find all that stuff. It'll be in the reports the developers have done. But if you look at them with a critical eye, you can see things, look for the things that they have not done or are not saying that you know. I was involved in the Hinckley National Rail Freight interchange where I was working for a local village. The Hinckley National Rail Freight interchange, which is a massive development, was turned down, and the main reason was because of a road through that village. And it was because the people in that village who I was working with could show that that road couldn't take the lorries, which all these very professional people paid for by HNRFI were saying it could. So just remember that if you put in good case, that is what matters as much as the professionals. Now, you may, having a professional, and the last thing I wanted to mention, schools, hospitals, schools, medical, if you can get the local medical centre to say, we are full, to write you a letter that says we don't have places, even if they won't comment, but say we do not have places, that is something you will need if you're going to an examiner, if it goes to an inquiry. Get those things written down so you can hand them. So when the inspector says, how do we know this is true? The headmaster has said this is true.
Thank you, Gerald. I don't know whether we're able to answer Ian's question about the public footpaths. I believe that the developers can put forward proposals to divert them. I don't know whether the council has to agree that. Do you know, Councillor Wilson? Or?
So from my understanding, they can propose anything they want to propose. The council would have to agree to it. And anything like that, probably Joe would agree, is a great objection point. And it highlights it to the councillors on that committee. So the council would have to approve it, definitely. But respectfully to the developers, they can put anything they want. And sometimes on these applications, you do see some random suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's not easy to divert a public right-of-way, so they'd have to make sure they do it in the proper channels. Because it's been there for years, then it would be very difficult. So they do need to make sure that's highlighted.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that advice. What I'd like to do now, I mentioned that John Murphy, one of the local residents, wasn't able to attend. He did send me one or two questions that he would like to raise at the meeting. Particularly, really, it's around decisions being evidence-led and policy compliant. So if I can, the first one is for Wendy Morton. He said, Wendy, that he wrote to you raising specific concerns about how recent changes to the National Planning Policy Framework were made, including the absence of parliamentary scrutiny and the practical consequences for areas like Aldridge. He said it took 6 weeks and 2 replies before his correspondence was passed to Baroness Taylor. And said the response largely repeated the content of his original email. His question was, can you explain what the parliamentary oversight or democratic mechanism was that was used to alter the NPPF and what role you were able to play in scrutinising challenging the changes, please? Please.
Planning policy framework. I'm getting a nod over there. So as I'm an opposition MP, so my job is, yes, to try and hold the government to account and to scrutinise them. But I'll be quite honest, I have limited tools to be able to do that in opposition. So a lot of these changes that have gone through recently, including this one about the grey belt definition, it's been very, very difficult for us to act. Well, the government don't listen, basically. I'm sorry, but I have to get quite political on this, because when I was in government, when we were in government, even then I was calling for changes to the NPPF around land supply, because I felt that the land supply, so it was 7 years, which basically meant that developers could land bank for a certain number of years. They didn't have to build on it. And a number of us pushed and pushed to get that reduced. So now, change of government, things are different. Grey belt definition has appeared. All I can say is that the response that if somebody writes to me, I can set out what our position is as the opposition, but I do feed letters from residents, from constituents into ministers, which is what that was, to get their response. I've got no control over how quickly or how slowly those replies come back. And of late, when I've been asking a whole host of questions, I don't really get an answer that is particularly helpful or constructive either. So, what does that mean? It means that I will continue to do all I can to raise questions of the government, as I did this week. I put in a lot of written questions, as well as poor old Liam, who works for me, knows. So we will continue to do that and to keep pushing, as a number of my colleagues will as well. One of the key things I'm pushing on at the minute is the housing target. It's local government questions in the House of Commons on Monday, and I know that we, as His Majesty's official opposition, will be asking questions around housing targets. There is this target of 1.5 million homes. I don't know where that came from. I do know we need some homes, but 1.5 million, those actually could be developed, built, delivered, if the government really committed to brownfield first, to using commercial buildings and also empty properties. You spoke about Birmingham having an excess. We recently uncovered that Birmingham have something like, I think it was 5,000 empty homes. So straight away, there's lots of things that could be done to actually deliver the homes that are needed and protect the green belt in areas such as ours. So I've probably fallen into the trap of not answering the question, but believe you me, I do keep asking those questions, because that's what I will do, because I feel really strongly about this.
Thank you. While I've got you there, Wendy, sorry, can I, it feels a bit like Parliament this, but can I come up with a further question from John for you on the same thing? He has said that he understands that the NPPF is guidance rather than statute. But he feels it's being treated locally as if it overrides material planning considerations such as infrastructure capacity, deliverability and environmental risk. So what he asked was, do you accept that councils are entitled to depart from the NPPF where its application produces unsustainable outcomes? And will you support Walsall Council if it refuses applications in Aldridge on that basis, even if the housing targets are cited in the field?
First of all, what I do vehemently oppose is the target that we have been given for housing in Walsall, because I think it's excessive, and I don't quite know where they came from the number from, because when I add it all up, it gets to about 18,000 homes. And no kidding, I've got a whiteboard in my office and we keep writing them on there, and we've run out of space now. 18,000 haven't come forward yet, and I know it's a 10-year plan. So I will back Walsall Council to the hilt when it comes to pushing back on these housing numbers. Will it get me anywhere? Well, I won't know till I find out, will I? But I'm not prepared just to sit back. Hence the questions that I continue to keep asking, which is why this evening has been really helpful to me to understand a little bit more about Birmingham. I knew about Telford. I hear from colleagues in Stoke that Stoke could probably take more. They have brownfield. But to develop brownfield sites, government has to be prepared to put money into it to level the playing field so that developers will then start and develop on the brownfield sites. But it can be done, and Walsall has got a good record of doing it at the Caparo site and the Harvester's site. There's two sites which proves that we can do it. And I firmly believe that regenerating our towns and our cities is critical. Young people often want to live in towns and cities, but it also helps to generate footfall into our town centres, and our high streets are really struggling in many areas now. So we've just got to keep fighting and pushing all these different points, which is what I and a lot of my colleagues continue to do.
Thank you. Can we put a question to Councillor Tim Wilson as well, please?
Hi, so can you explain how the council is lawfully assessing the cumulative impact of these developments on education, highways, drainage, healthcare and water supply, rather than treating each application as a standalone case? And if no cumulative assessments exist, how can the planning committee be satisfied that Aldridge is not already beyond sustainable capacity?
I have a very short answer, so you'd be good to. Yeah. So no is the answer. I haven't got the idea or the answer to how they're working at the cumulative. What I can do is get a response if yourself would like one, David, and if John wants one, I can get you one. Unless John's got any idea. No, so we can get you an answer, but I wouldn't know just off the top of my head.
No, thank you for that, Councillor.
I've got a gent at the back here that wants to speak. He's been trying to speak.
Forgotten why I'm here now. Yeah, getting back to the point about the surveys being done in the summer and when we've had dry months and lots of other things involved in that. What's to stop ourselves going and doing our own surveys and in an independent way? Because the cynic in me tells me that the developer will just do things to get things done, really. So we ought to, as a group, consider what to do in a wider sense to say, well, look at all aspects and look at it from an independent point of view at different times of the year to see that groundwater, there's no additional risks of flooding, which of course there will be when you have greater runoff and other things and potential subsidence of the buildings that they're looking to build.
Yes, that's a good point, thank you. We have been trying to gather photographs from different times of year and we have got some photographs of the fields where there's a lot of water on them. But yes, I think there's further work to do on that, certainly. I'm talking about our doing our own bat surveys, ecological surveys, geological surveys. It's not hard to do. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, like you've mentioned bat surveys there. There is a bat group, the Birmingham and Black Country Bat Group, which I've been in contact with, as well as the Wildlife Trust. The last survey that they did was 2022, but that's where we've got the information about, as Wendy mentioned, the 9 species of bats within Cuckoo's Nook and Dingledale. Okay, anybody else? Okay, I'm just looking at the clock and I think it's just gone 8:30. So I propose we stop, have a look at the weather. If anybody wishes to go now, quite understand. I think, you know, we need to be very wary of the weather. But thank you ever so much for coming. I'd just like to say before we finish, that as I mentioned earlier, I think the things we need to do next really are to lobby the councillors, think about protests outside the council house. If anyone hasn't put in objections, please do so. There have been 1 or 2 things that we could follow up on that have been mentioned. We are raising money, so if you would like to leave a donation or would like to make a donation to the GoFundMe page that we have, you will have been handed a slip as you came in with the GoFundMe page details on it. And there are also a couple of containers just on the right-hand side as you go out the door if you wanted to make a cash donation there. Thank you very much. Yeah, I've just been told the weather's closing in, so I think probably that's a good time to call an end to the meeting. Thank you.